Good afternoon, folks, and welcome back to the second to last episode of Hospo Happy Hour, proudly brought to you by Hospo for Life and Warner's Distillery. We have a great show lined up for you all today. We will be discussing building fitness to return to work with Jack Whitaker, followed by industry veteran Justin North, who is the co-founder and director of Concept Hospitality for Last Drinks. Let's get Wednesday underway. Joining us for the first round and the last time on the show, we've got Jack Whitaker. How are you, Jack?
I'm good, thanks, Liam. Thanks for having me on again.
No, my pleasure, mate. It's good to have you back and your last show with us and that. So, yeah, great to have you.
It's been awesome to be part of the program. It's it's been a real honour.
Yeah, no, thanks, mate. So today's episode, tell us how we can build our fitness to return to work.
Yeah, so look, Liam, these last few months, they've been pretty tough. There's no doubt about that for everyone, and it's been quite uncertain. But at the moment, there's some easing restrictions, and it's looking like we might be returning to some modified sense of normalcy again. And this means getting back to things like socialising or sporting activities, but most importantly, it means getting back to work.
Yeah.
So I'm sure for many of your viewers, and you included, Liam, that you're itching to get back to work.
Oh, mate.
Not just for the financial benefit, but to see co-workers again, regain a sense of purpose, and just get back to normal routines.
Absolutely.
So I know a few weeks ago, Liam, when I was on the program, we talked about getting motivated to exercise and some tips on how to get active and create a plan. And one thing that really stuck with me that you said was that when you're working in busy kitchens, you're often doing 20,000 steps a day on your feet for 10, 12, 14 hours and doing a wide range of physically demanding duties.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you can attest to this, Liam, but I've got no doubt in my mind that when you were doing that day in, day out, week in, week out, you had a pretty high level of conditioning.
Yeah.
Meaning that even though you need to do your physically demanding jobs on a daily basis, you had the ability to do it, and it was doable.
Yeah.
You were fit, you were conditioned, and you had the tolerance to be able to get through the day, to do everything that you needed to be done, and back up again day after day after day.
I couldn't go and do it now. I'd be like, what's going on?
Exactly right. And that's what the next question was going to be is what happens after you have some time off?
Yeah.
When you've got that time away from work like most of you and your viewers have had for the past 3 months. Do you think it'll be as easy to get back as it was before?
No. And it doesn't matter whether it's, work or, sport or whatever. The more time you have out of that, the harder it is to get back to that fitness that you actually need. I played footy for 10 years. And I took a big break from Aussie rules, and then I went back after 6 years, and that did my knee straight away. And the body just couldn't handle it anymore.
Exactly right. It's one of those things where we need to keep working at it, and it's not like riding a bike where it comes back to you straight away. It takes hard work and it takes time, and exactly like you've seen and heard before.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example of that might be a little bit more tangible to some of your viewers. So imagine that you're a chef. So I know you don't need to imagine very hard, but imagine that you've been given a recipe and you need to cook it for the first time, which I'm sure you've been in a position of.
Yeah.
You read the recipe, you learn how to make it, and you have a go at making it for the first time. And what usually happens, so I know from my limited culinary experience that the first time I've ever cooked something new, it always takes a lot longer to cook than expected. There's a lot more mess in the kitchen, and it doesn't look exactly or taste exactly how it was meant to.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience before, Liam?
Yep, sure have. Some recipes just don't work out.
Exactly right. But then what happens if you practice that 4, 5, 6, 7 times? Does it usually get a little better?
Yeah, it improves.
And look, it's spot on with work as well and with conditioning your body. So essentially what's happened with that is you become more conditioned to cooking the recipe and your tolerance has improved to doing it as well. And with more and more practice, it becomes autonomous.
Yeah.
So the same kind of goes for working, and not just in kitchen or in hospitality, but for any job at all.
Yeah.
The more and more you engage in doing it, the easier, more efficient, and more tolerable it becomes.
Yeah, definitely.
You basically become fitter at doing your job, just like match practice is for athletes out there.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things we do know is that you can lose your tolerance or your fitness for work duties just as quickly as you can gain them.
Yeah.
And like I said before, it's not like riding a bike. It needs to be maintained and worked on regularly to keep your body in a position to be able to tolerate doing it.
That it does.
And losing this fitness or tolerance is called deconditioning.
Yeah.
So deconditioning is defined as having lost fitness or muscle tone, especially through a lack of activity. And
Yeah.
that last part is really important. So I'm going to say it again, and that's lack of activity. So for the clients that we see in our practice on a day-to-day basis, in 100% of cases, we always see a reduction in activity levels, whether it's reduced work hours, reduced work duties, reduced social activities, or a lack of activities around the house.
Yeah.
Every client that comes to us has reduced their overall movement and activity in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And it's so true when when you aren't doing as much, and those fatigue levels become a lot higher. And that the less you do, the more tired you seem to be, it's a weird balance, but it's true.
And you're spot on with that, Liam. And that's exactly where a lot of the problems start, because the research tells us that depending on how fit you were before, you can start losing your strength or fitness within 24 hours of stopping movement.
Yeah.
And within 5 to 6 weeks, you can lose 30 to 40% of your overall strength and fitness that you had before.
Definitely.
So within 5 to 6 weeks, if you lose 30 or 40% of your overall strength and fitness, that's quite significant.
Yeah, it is.
And when we look at a physiological point of view, losing 30 to 40% of your strength is extremely significant. And like you said, it reduces our ability to do the tasks we need to do because you've simply lost the ability and the tolerance to do so.
Yeah.
So if most people in hospitality, whether they be chefs, baristas, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, or managers, have been off work since March this year when COVID hit, that's over 8 weeks, and that's way past that 5 to 6 week point.
Yeah.
So what this essentially means is that unless they've been as active as they were whilst they were working, which I'm guessing most people haven't been, then they could have lost more than 40% of their strength, which means they've lost 40% of their physical capacity to get the job done.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And 40% is big numbers. I mean, in tangible terms, if you needed to stand on your feet for 14 hours for work, that means you can only tolerate doing it for 8.5.
Yeah.
And when you really break that down to each work duty and each staff member, it really becomes quite significant. The other danger that comes from this reduction in activity that we've seen and a loss of strength is increased pain, or the chances of increased pain.
Yeah.
So along with pain comes more weakness in the body, regular overload, meaning your body fatigues quicker, like you said before, and can't handle what it once did, which often causes inflammation. Now, I've seen this happen more times than I can count, and it often leads to a loss of ability to work, reduced working hours, reduced social engagement, and a lack of confidence. And it's not a great cycle to be a part of.
No. And especially in the ankles, and that after standing that long, you don't realize how much your ankles swell up.
Exactly right. It gets to a point where your body is just not used to doing what it needs to do, or it doesn't have that strength to be able to tolerate it. And that's where the pain generally kicks in, like you've said there. So I know that John last week was on the program, and he mentioned that pain acts as a danger system for our body. So it comes from the brain and it protects us from more damage. So I want you to think of pain as a danger system in the context of standing behind a bar for 14 hours at work. So imagine you've had 10 weeks off work and you're expected to go back to work and stand for 14 hours after you've done next to no activity or movement for the past 10 weeks. You've done nowhere near as much as you were doing before COVID hit, and you were working 5 days a week then. So what do you think is going to happen?
The pain factor of just pulling that, and then the days afterwards as well, and that the recovery rate's going to be, quite tricky.
Yes, spot on with that, Liam. I mean, what's going to happen is essentially your body's going to get to a certain point, and let's look at that single shift of 14 hours, for example. You might get about 8.5 hours into the shift, and all of a sudden your body and your brain's going to start to tell you that I've hit my tolerance. I can't keep doing this for much longer. I haven't done this for 10 weeks. I've lost a lot of strength and fitness. I'm going to try and get you to stop doing all this standing, but how do I do that? And that's when your brain sends you some pain, which generally gets us to stop standing or have a break or have a bit of a rest.
Yeah. And
but
I think for, any body management or owners which might be watching today's episode, you need to be patient with your employees when we go back as well, and that because they're not conditioned to cope with the hours that they once did prior, and that they will get tired a lot more quicker. So I think we've got to be really patient with our staff over the next, again, another 6 weeks, and that for everyone just to get used to their daily of what they were used to pre-COVID.
Exactly right there, Liam. And I guess the one thing that does work in our favor is that we can actually build our strength and fitness back up again just as quickly as we lost it. So even though we've lost a significant amount over the last 10 weeks, with a bit of time, bit of effort, bit of planning, and a lot more movement, we can actually recondition our body to get back to where we need to be. Yeah. But you're spot on with that. It's going to take time. It's going to take a bit of understanding. But in practical terms, for a lot of your viewers watching, the time to start is essentially now. I mean, from the 1st of June, which is this weekend, restrictions are getting more and more relaxed. And depending what state you're in, a lot of people are getting back to work in some capacity. So this means more normalcy in our lives and getting back to work. So after 10 weeks of a lot of people having significantly reduced movement, now really is the time to think about how to build your strength back up and get your fitness back up to make that transition back to work a little smoother. Yeah. And I want to give you a quick example with this, and I want to talk about athletes for a second, especially in the NRL. So the NRL is planning to get underway again this Thursday, and they're about to restart one of the most physically demanding jobs out there. I mean, they're running, tackling, jumping, chasing, kicking for the best part of an hour and a half, and they haven't done so for 10 weeks. And do you think athletes like that would just strap on their boots and run out there on Thursday after having 10 weeks off?
No way.
Exactly right. There's no way that they're going to be doing that. They've been training for the past 3 to 4 weeks. They've been working on their match fitness, or for them, essentially their work fitness, to make sure they've built up enough strength and tolerance to get the job safely done. Yeah. And I mean, working in hospitality is no different. Hospitality is physically demanding. And after 2.5 months off, expecting to get the job done with no physical preparation is quite difficult. But the best way that you can do this and prepare yourself for the rigors of work is to create a plan, something that we talked about last week. Yeah. Think about all the tasks that you need to do at work, whether it be working behind a bar, working in a kitchen, making coffees, cleaning tables, whatever it may be. And then think about how much time you spent working before COVID. It might have been 6, 8, 12 hours a day. And compare that to what you're doing now and ask yourself, is it as much as you were doing before? If the answer is no, which it probably is, then you need to get moving and get active to recondition and build your body back up again. Some little tips are try and gradually increase your activity levels. So this may include increasing your time spent walking by 10 or 15 minutes each day. Yeah. It might mean 1 extra workout at home. It might be 2 extra loads of washing while you're having lunch. It could be an extra 15 minutes of throwing the ball around with your dog in the backyard. Yeah. It doesn't have to be drastic, nor should it be. But what you should be doing is week on week, gradually building up your activity levels and your movement to a point that matches your levels of movement pre-COVID. Yeah. So by doing this, you actually give yourself the best chance of building as much strength and fitness and tolerance for work as possible. I mean, if you want to avoid having more fatigue and being more tired, like you mentioned before, having reduced concentration, an increased risk of injury or increased pain, then your best bet is to think about getting active in a gradual and a tolerable way. Because the most important point is we can build our strength and fitness back up just as easily as we can lose it. Yeah. So what I want to go into now is a little bit about getting back to work. So let's say that restrictions continue to ease, which we're all hoping that they do. And you've been working 2 days a week compared to 5 days a week before COVID hit. And your boss calls you up and he says, yeah, look, I need you back full time in the kitchen, Liam. And you've been watching Hospo for Life, and you know the information that you've heard has been telling you to get physically prepared for getting back to work, and that doing more movement slowly but surely is the safest way to doing this. Yeah. Is there anything else that you can do to ensure that you improve your chances of not only returning to work full time, but staying there on a durable basis?
Oh, there's lots. There's lots of ways.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to go to is some strategies that people can implement, and a lot of your viewers can do when they do get back to work to make sure that they can get back to work, but not just get there, but stay there as well. I mean, in my line of work, we're in the business of helping people and assisting people to realize their health potential. Yeah. And for most people, they spend the majority of their day at work. So if we can assist them to get back to work and stay at work, then they're being the best version of themselves they can be and getting as many health benefits as possible. So some of the main tips that I like to give people about work is, the first one is regular exercise. So I know this one is really important, and it's basically highlighting a lot of what we've been talking about today. but regular exercise keeps our bodies strong, fit, and conditioned. And not just for work, but for activities at home or driving the car or playing sports or seeing friends. Like we've talked about before, exercise doesn't have to be done in the traditional sense. Make it fun, make it exciting, but more importantly, make it meaningful and enjoyable to you. Another big one to do at work is workplace stretches. So what we know is that when our bodies can't tolerate doing a certain movement or activity anymore, they become fatigued, like you mentioned before. And when our bodies become fatigued, it often leads to overload within the muscles, the tendons, and the ligaments throughout our bodies. So overload can very much often lead to swelling and inflammation, which inevitably leads to pain. What workplace stretches do, and stretching in general, they're a great way to unload tension that becomes stored in the muscles. Stretching deloads or unloads muscles and actually redistributes that load to other structures which can tolerate doing so. As a result, this then leads to reduced inflammation, swelling, and can also help bring your pain levels down. Another big one for work is pacing. So this one I find really super important. When getting back to work, especially after not working for the best part of 3 months, don't go 1,000 miles an hour. It definitely won't achieve anything. So just pace yourself, take your time doing things. Remember, you lost all that strength and tolerance to doing your job. So like you said before, it takes time to get things back to normal. They will return, but it's also going to take a bit of time. So pace yourself with the jobs, take many short breaks if needed. So some tips that I used to do when I was working hospitality was I'd take a quick extra bathroom break every hour or two. Or I'd have a quick stretch in the back room, or I'd just sit down on the floor for 30 seconds. But I think the big part is don't go 1,000 miles an hour and take your time doing things. And the last tip that I can give today is regarding manual handling. So I know that John mentioned this a little bit on the program last week, but manual handling, especially in physically demanding jobs like hospitality, is crucial.
It is.
To take the time to do things properly, whether it be climbing the stairs one at a time, or lifting with your legs, or avoiding reaching too far, or try not to carry too much. All these strategies ensure that you're looking after your body as much as possible. And it actually gives yourself the best chance of success when it comes to getting back to work and staying at work safely too.
And it helps our businesses' occupational health and safety plans, and that for employees as well, and that less time out of work and more time at work.
Exactly right. I mean, they're all there for a reason, and it's all backed by research and science. So everything that they're recommending is there to help workers and to help employees stay at work, stay healthy, and kind of get the job done. So look, times are definitely changing, Liam. They might not be the same as before, but we're undoubtedly slowly getting back to some sense of what the new normal is going to be. Some things will change, some won't, but what definitely won't change is the importance of preparing your body for movement and getting back to work. So remember, you can lose 30 to 40% of your strength in 5 to 6 weeks. Considering COVID has restricted work for 10 weeks, just think about how much you might have lost during that time. The big tips I can give is get active, create a plan, and make sure you yourself and your viewers look after yourself.
Great tips, Jack. And it's good to have your knowledge to help everyone that views the show. And it's been absolutely fantastic having you on.
No, I really appreciate it, Liam. Thanks for the opportunity to come on and talk to your viewers and give them a bit of an insight to all the benefits that exercise can give them.
No, it's fantastic. And hopefully we look forward to catching up with you again during Mental Health Week when the Hospo Happy Hour will return.
That'd be fantastic, Liam. I'd love to be a part of it.
No, thank you. Thanks, Jack. And good luck over the next few months.
Thanks, Liam. You too, mate.
Cheers. Up for last drinks today, we have special guest industry veteran Justin North, who's the co-founder and director of Concept Hospitality. Welcome to the show, Justin.
G'day, mate. How are you? It's good to be here.
Yeah, cheers for joining us. So,
Pleasure.
Tell me, you've had a wonderful career across hospitality. Tell us what you do with Concept and how COVID's affected business at the moment.
Yeah, well, I guess first of all, I mean, Concept Hospitality's been around for a few years now, and I guess what I sort of provide as a consultancy firm to people is expertise and everywhere from sort of rethinking hospitality spaces, whether that be existing businesses or new builds through the hotel sector, pub sector, cafes, restaurants, the whole sort of shebang. So it's based on 11 different modules. So there's research and development, and then there's actual coming up with concepts, developing them for new businesses, and then a training and operation module as well following that. So because I've always sort of consulted sort of in the background of when I've sort of run my own businesses, and then I guess a few years ago after Hotel Centennial, then I sort of put all my focus into this, which has been going well. And then COVID was interesting because I sort of felt a little bit different from the restaurant space, I guess, because a lot of our clients are in hotels. So earlier on in the piece, before I guess Australia started getting affected too much, like as the tourism sector started to drop off and the inbound traffic from China started to drop, hotel occupancy rates started to drop. So I could sort of feel things changing earlier on, which was probably early February, I think, early to mid-February. And then obviously that just sort of snowballed for everyone as it got into March, and then, you know, Armageddon around that 23rd of March, I think it was, wasn't it, when the full shutdown happened. So yeah, look, it was pretty full on. I mean, as things were sort of changing, then, you know, I sort of started pivoting into different sort of areas, started doing a bit more catering and private events earlier on, still around that sort of March time, when a lot of the consultancy stuff was sort of, you know, a lot of our projects have been pushed back either indefinitely or later in the year, or people just weren't sure. So didn't have too much cancel. It just sort of, everything just sort of got pushed back. So that was tricky. And then as the social distancing started happening and we sort of started getting affected, then started to do, you know, the private catering events, which I'd always sort of done, but I hadn't really advertised it. It's just sort of one of those side things that when people come to you and say, hey, can you do this? You go, yeah, for sure. So started putting a lot more focus on that. And then as that started to sort of build a bit of momentum, then obviously the complete shutdown happened. So it was sort of like, you know, as you tried to pivot into different things, and then more and more restrictions came on. So but the lockdown sort of thing's been interesting.
Yeah. How do you see things coming out of it? Like, and that, do you see the industry bouncing back quickly, or do you see it taking a little bit longer now? Yeah,
look, I think it is going to take a long time, you know, because I guess there's recovering from the health issues and people's, you know, concerns around that in terms of interacting in bars and in restaurants. That's going to be one issue. And then obviously probably the longer term issue is going to be the financial impact. So there's sort of two recoveries coming out of this. So look, it's clear to see as things start to lift, like speaking to a few operators who are doing the 10 people in the restaurants. That's, you know, I mean, for most people, it makes no sense to do that. But for the ones that are doing a lot of takeaway, have the staff on, you know, that sort of thing, to add in a table of 10, it sort of makes sense to do that. But obviously to open up a whole business just to do a table of 10 doesn't. But the ones that are, it certainly seems to be working well for them in terms of the tables booking out. I think there'll be a bit of an initial spike. And then sadly, I think then we'll see a lot of issues, you know, but it also depends a lot around how things recover. Like obviously how long JobKeeper is going to go for, and how that's going to look longer term. Is it just going to come to a halt end of September, October time? You know, all the back rent's going to be due around that time. All the debt's going to be due. Like, if at the moment it looks like everything's going to sort of happen at once, but I would imagine government will try and do something to sort of spread that out a little bit more, because as you know, I mean, to try and run a hospitality business before COVID was very, very, very difficult. To try and run one now, a post-COVID environment, you know, with social distancing, with, you know, whatever health and safety things have to be implemented, you know, whether it's COVID supervisors or you know, whatever the extra things are, the extra staff, the extra manpower that's needed to do that, you know, and less revenue, it's going to be
more costly.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, as you know, there's no margin in it anyway. So yeah,
we were about to open a bistro, our first branded bistro, literally COVID hit, and that's
Mm.
only 2 weeks away. Signed the contracts, everything ready to go, and ready to kick start it, and we're really happy to get it going. And then all of a sudden, it all stopped. Now we're kind of looking at it, going, well, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, the amount of staff that you still need to cover across, all of those.
Yeah.
We're not going to bring in that revenue in through the door. So it's basically useless.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had to sort of just put everything on hold ourselves as well. And I think, maybe the private catering side of things might bounce back a little bit quicker, and people stay home and have parties at home, but it's the unknown still, this far along, and that will happen next. So
it'll be certainly, it'll be really interesting to see. I think what's very clear is that the traditional restaurant model that we know of in the past, I think you're pretty much guaranteed to say that model is going to be no longer. I think the exciting thing is, how does that now look coming out of this and in the future? And, I guess there's all those value added sort of things to your business that's going to bring in extra revenue. So even if your core business is on, a restaurant or a bar, it's like, what can I add into that that's not going to add to the cost base, but can add to revenue and add to profit?
Diversify and that business. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know myself and a lot of others, we've all it's affected our mental health at some point over the last 8 weeks. Has it had any effect on your mental health? And what are some things that you do otherwise to keep your mental health good?
Yeah, look, I think in a way, it's sort of been a busy period, and I think I was lucky enough to sort of do a lot of work on my mental health in the years gone by. So I think I was probably in a fairly good position and have a good sort of, I refer to it as like a toolbox or a set of tools that I can use when you can sort of feel yourself going into different, things. And so there's, I guess, that side of it that I love to understand, and I guess it's been able to have that. You sort of need to be very honest with yourself, not mask your feelings with drugs or alcohol or whatever. It's been able to really, I think, traditionally in the hospitality industry, we cover our feelings with those maskers and whatever that is. So to be able to really feel how you're feeling and being able to sit with those feelings, and then add the tools and whatever that is. And I think it's just we're very creative people, and in terms of the mental side of things, like I love to be able to keep cooking at home, and whether it's posting little videos or even doing researching new dishes or old dishes or whatever, but being able to post and engage with people through the social channels, I think has helped me a lot. I do quite a lot of art, whether it's painting or sketching and that sort of stuff. So I think that's really good. And the big thing for me is exercise and sleep, I find, and a little bit of diet in there as well. Like, it's funny, I think in our industry, years gone by, to have 3 hours sleep or 4 hours sleep was not uncommon. You'd almost sort of wear that as a bit of a badge of honor, but certainly over the years, I've come to know that, the more sleep you get, 8 hours is a luxury and not always possible, but certainly to aim for that 7 to 8 hour sleep time, I know for me now makes a massive difference, huge difference to the way I feel, and the way I operate. And to be able to have that good sleep, to do good exercise, whatever you love to do, and whether that's getting out, having fresh air, run, bike, going to the gym, lifting weights, whatever, stimulates you, having sleep and good exercise, I think is really, really important. Yeah. It is for me anyway. And then, I think watching what I eat also fuels into that. Like, I know when I have a lot of sort of heavy carb stuff, or a lot of sugary sort of stuff, it does, like, I just feel weighted down a lot more. So I find if I sort of get that right, and I'm not talking like hardcore keto diets and any of that sort of stuff, I'm just sort of, what I think works really well for me is having it's not even intermittent fasting really, it's just sort of having a rest between, of eating, maybe it's, my last food's at sort of 7 or 8 at night, then I'd probably not try and eat again until, 10 or 11, sometimes midday, and just have a bit of a break. And I feel I'm a lot more alert, a lot more lighter, mental health, mental clarity is a lot better. So those 3 things, the sleep, the exercise, and sort of what I'm consuming, I find what you put into your body and how you react has a massive impact on how you feel. It certainly does for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly does. We've had lots of chats about that on the show over the last 6 weeks, and that not only sleep, like getting 7 to 8 hours is like the optimum. And I've had to while I've been off as well, and because it's quite easy to stay up late, and that I'm still going to get up at the same time in the morning, you really see the difference from having 8 hours to having like 5 hours, and it makes a difference. And definitely exercise is, it's great for everything, endorphins and feeling good and getting out. And that when you're feeling stressed out, it definitely helps.
I think what's interesting as well is, I think just in any industry, or particularly hospitality, I guess, is that we quite often put ourselves last. We're always looking after the guests. We're always sort of looking after our team and our mates and that sort of stuff. And, I think to be able to really do that properly, I think what I've learned is that you actually got to put yourself first a lot of the time. And by that, I mean, making sure you're doing those things that we've just been speaking about, carving out the right amount of time, for sleep. People go, I haven't got time and all this sort of stuff. But what I've found is that I'm so much more efficient when I do have that right amount of sleep. I do carve out some time for exercise, try and take care of what I eat. Then everything else around that seems to fall into place, so much better.
Yeah, you got to find, you definitely do have to put yourself first. And, I realized that after sort of year 2 of business, going, wow, I do so much for everyone else and I just don't look after myself. And then year 3 came, year 4 came, and it was like, whoa, now I really need to do something for myself. And same thing. Like I find hobbies which, relax you is a good thing. Like when I finish work, I come home and I play my piano and I start doing music, and it sort of just really clears the mind and gets things moving. And we've also had a lot of chats about, finding other things outside of hospitality as well. So you're not completely, it's not just all about work time as well. I became last year for something different to do. And,
wow. It's amazing.
Finding other things, which, doesn't take any time from other things and work and business, but everything in moderation and steps, and that you can live a good life still. And you're not just, focusing all your energies and putting all your eggs in one basket. It's sort of, it keeps things interesting, and, you don't get too bored of doing the same old either.
No, absolutely. And I've also found over the last few years doing a little bit of mindfulness as well, whether that's sort of meditating or breathing. Like I've found breathing is a massive, just from calm, when you start to feel a bit anxious about stuff, whether it's, if you're going to do a big presentation or whatever, and there's nervousness there, or whether, you've had too many coffees and you're like really sort of a little bit, anxious about what's, just that sort of stuff in your stomach, and you sort of, and you sort of, you naturally just fall into this really shallow type, quite uptight sort of breathing, and you can feel yourself just sort of, and you just keep working yourself up more and more to be able to sort of recognize that and be aware of that. And then, even just to pull yourself down for like 2 minutes and just do that really nice, deep stomach breathing, and sort of blow that rib cage and balloon up in your stomach, and nice, long, slow breaths, and you can do that on the train, on the bus, in the toilet at work, wherever you are. Just a couple of minutes can really shift that paradigm, I think, massively, and that's, I even tell that to my kids. Like if I've got kids get nervous, don't they, and worried about talking, in front of assembly or a presentation or project or whatever, just to take a couple of minutes and just sort of breathe, and, makes a huge difference. Often it's funny because I often find advice that I give my kids sometimes that I often end up sort of reverting back to that myself when, when you're under the pressure a little bit. So,
Big time. we're the same here, and yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can give that advice. Sometimes you just got to take it yourself.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
As well. Yeah. So one thing we like to do, and we like to wrap up every interview with some positive steps, and that
Yeah.
you know come out of what we're in at the moment. And what advice can you give to our viewers? And that sort of something to, you know, perhaps look forward to, or something that can benefit them, and that moving forward into the future and coming out of COVID.
In terms of mental health or business?
Both.
I think, well, I guess from business now, like I think, you know, the past, whatever it is, 8 weeks, or I can't even remember, but whatever, you know, like I think now is the time to really rethink what you're doing and to really analyze every single component of your business and sort of let go of what was in the past and really try and think what the future of hospitality is going to be like. And people, you know, have been in lockdown for a long time. They're going to want something fun, something engaging, something real, something honest. And I guess to be able to really satisfy the customers and satisfy that, you've got to be sort of confident and happy and doing what you truly love doing. And that'll probably come with less nonsense and less noise and less bells and whistles, and really focus on something from your heart that you love and gives you a lot of enjoyment. And yeah, I guess advice in terms of the mental side of things, I think personally for me in years gone by, I would sort of control moods by drinking or whatever, you know, like if you feel happy, you go and celebrate. You feel sad, you go and drown yourself, you know, like you're constantly like this, and you never really get to understand how you feel. And if you can't, you know, if you're masking that all the time, if you don't really know what's happening, then you can't really fix anything. So to be able just to sort of, you know, to pull back on the booze or drugs or whatever, and just try and, or get help around that area, so that at least you've got a bit more rawness there, and then you can start to go, you know what, this is how I actually really do feel. And, you know, when I do get a bit of extra sleep, this is how it actually really makes me feel. Or, you know, if I'm breathing and having mindfulness, you know, these are the positive steps from that, and to take much more enjoyment connecting with the process, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's, you know, and it's also, you know, outside of, you know, whether it's, you know, masking those problems, it's finding the coping strategies, and that aren't, you know, say perhaps alcohol or other things, and you know, finding those mechanisms to actually, you know, help you. I know from years and years ago from working in kitchens, and that same thing, you know, celebrate, have one, had a bad day, go and have one, and then it just flows from day to day, and you eventually feel yourself getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And you keep masking that issue, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and you explode. You can't handle it, and that it gets too bad. And that, so no, that's some really good advice, Justin.
Yeah, that's good. Because I mean, I guess the thing is, for us, we're on a constant roller coaster, right? Of, you know, the pressure of getting your mise en place done, getting ready for service, the intensity of service, the low afterwards. You're constantly going up and down, up and down. You get to the end of the day, and you just, you know, like you're frazzled, and you just think, oh, I need a drink, boom, and you know, you're tired. You go to bed, you get up, and you sort of just, you wake up tired. You smash your coffees. You're getting anxious again. It's that whole cycle. So to try and just sort of pull back a little bit from that, I think is really important. And congratulations on what you're doing as well, mate, because I think these types of things that offer an easy pathway for people to get into and easy access is so important.
Yeah, it's definitely needed. And you know, it doesn't matter who you are, you never have to feel guilty about it. You know, we all need sometimes just that little bit of extra help, and that to make ourselves feel normal. And that, because we are in, you know, probably, you know, one of the top 5 most pressured, you know, industries in the world, and jobs, and that, so you can't sort of look at that lightly and go, oh, it doesn't matter, and that's not me, like everyone else is too. So, you know, and it's well documented. So no, it's good to be able to provide that level of support that people need. Yeah. No, well, thanks so much for joining us, Justin. Taking some time.
My pleasure.
To hop on and have a chat.
Yeah, well, I appreciate being part of it, and well done. It's a great initiative.
Thanks so much. And good luck with everything over the coming months.
Thank you, mate. Take care.
Cheers, Justin. Bye.
Good one.
That's all we have time for on today's show. You can catch us back here on Friday for our last episode of Hospo Happy Hour. We'll be wrapping up the show with Derek Borrian with a few takeaways to help with your mental health for the future. And then we'll be catching up with our proud partners, Tom and Tina Warner from Warner's Distillery. And for last drinks, we'll be finishing with a special interview that's not to be missed. Big thanks to our guests on today's show and our partners Warner's Gin and Artist Group for the support. Stay strong and stay united in spirit to create a positive change for a healthier industry. I'm Chef Liam Crawley. Have a great night.